This is the most asked question about my Jeep TJ. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone's doing well. Today we're going to talk about the Jeep TJ. More specifically, we're going to talk about the cost to convert it into a truck like this. I think I'm going to break this video up into two parts. One is going to talk about the actual conversion itself. So if you have a stock Jeep TJ and you want to convert it into a truck like this, we'll talk about the pricing around that. And then the second part, we'll talk about you already have the truck and then you want to add the axles, the wheels, the tires, the lights, the suspension, all that fun stuff. So let's get into it. Before we start talking about cost, I want to preface this with one thing. That's labor. My dad and I did this all ourselves, aside from a few things like a couple welds on the axle and alignments. We had Justice Off-Road take care of those few items, but everything else my dad and I did with, of course, the help from Frank and his team. They helped do all the body work and the painting, but all the fabrication side of things, all the welding, all the metal work, we did ourselves. If we had to pay a business or an off-road business to do this for us, I think I'd probably be living in the Jeep and my wife would have killed me. The cost probably would have been astronomical and unaffordable for me. If you plan on doing this yourself and you have the know-how, you have the tools, then it is very affordable. I think you'll be surprised at how much it costs. And the cost is going to be a rough estimate. I don't have exact numbers, but if you paid to have someone do this, you're going to pay a lot of money, I'm assuming. But if you're going to do it yourself, then you can definitely do it at a great price. Another thing, the frame under this Jeep is no longer the stock frame that my dad and I cut in half and stretched ourselves. It is a full custom throttle down customs frame. So when I'm referring to the steel for the frame, I'm referring to the one that my dad and I modified to make this build. So if you see the frame there's no cuts. That's because this frame has been completely changed. It has evolved into this. We're gonna first start talking about this, the truck conversion from a TJ to a single cab, 2-seat with a bed separate as you see it. I estimate the cost of something like this, the conversion, to be around $2,500. Now, a lot of you are probably gonna be like, that is insane. Are you sure that's correct? And yeah, I am. Let's talk about it. We did this conversion in the most economical way possible, especially us doing it all ourselves. We saved a ton of money. Some of the bigger items that you will need are gonna be the box steel for the frame extension. So we got 2" by 4". It was either 16 foot long or 20 foot long. It's just the minimum length we could buy it in. They could cut it in half in 8-foot sections for us, but we had to buy a 16-foot piece. That may be different everywhere you go looking for steel, but that was one of the bigger costs, along with a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet of 16 gauge steel. We used that to make the corners right here. And then we also used it to fill in gaps where the tailgate was on this original TJ corner. In the middle back there, we used a 16 gauge to fill that in. And then there's a lot of miscellaneous steel that you'll need, small tubing pieces for reinforcement, or using that 16 gauge to fill areas underneath right here in the corner or in the bed area. One of the most difficult parts of this build was the bed itself. I sourced 3 or 4 TJ tubs on Facebook Marketplace. I think I spent $35 for one and then maybe $250, $300 for another one that was in really good shape. And that is this main one you see right here. It comes about right here, and then everything else you see is one tub. And then we bent that 16 gauge to make this corner up here. We needed those other TJ tubs, those scrap pieces for the belt rails. Obviously, the TJ tubs don't have a belt rail all the way around, so we had to cut sections off like this and weld them to the 16 gauge. And the belt rails right here, we had to take off the other tubs and add to this right here. And if you are curious about the entire process, it is on a YouTube series or playlist called Project Crute. So if you want to see more about that, you can watch that series. I'm estimating probably a few $100s in TJ tubs from Facebook Marketplace. Another part of this conversion is going to be the hard top. You don't have to do the hard top if you don't want to. You could always make your own soft top, but the hard top, we had the hard top with us. It was a TJ hard top. It was just there ready to be cut in half. So cutting that in half, the most expensive part of that was all the fiberglass, the resin, the hardener, the Bondo, the primer. And I mean, the paint's not that expensive, it's just rattle can, but all those consumable materials get pretty expensive. And then it just comes down to labor. I mean, I think I spent in the garage just a few days straight sanding and bondoing lines into the top of the hard top and then my dad and I just worked it. I mean, there's a lot of time and love and energy put into that hard top. But a lot of your consumables, if you are going to go the painting route, you're going to be spending money on Bondo, your primer, your sanding blocks. But you don't have to go this route. You'll save a lot of money by not painting it. So if you just want to get it smooth and wrap it, you can absolutely do that. You can bed liner it, not care about any imperfections. But if you do go the painting route, it can get pretty expensive, but there's so many variations in brand paint you use, color, where you get it from. So it's hard to kind of price out a paint job, especially if you're paying someone to do it, or if you're doing it yourself, you're having a friend do it. But that's really up to you. I'd say in material cost to do the hardtop, it's probably another few $100s. I mean, you can't really buy single packs of resin and fiberglass. I mean, we were buying it in big bundles, the resin, the hardener, things like that. And we were buying marine grade stuff, which gets pretty expensive. So I'm assuming we probably have $400 or $500 in the hardtop itself. There's probably cheaper routes to do it, make the hardtop look like that. I'd probably look to spend at least $400 or $500. So moving underneath, another part of the conversion is the drive shaft. We have a drive shaft shop in Frederick, Maryland that we usually take all of our stuff to. I think we spent maybe $150 on that. It's not an Adams or a Tom Woods. I have an Adams in the front. I eventually need to upgrade that to a stronger one in the rear. But $150 to have a drive shaft made is a great price. And I think they just lopped the ends off and filled the middle with the drive shaft and used the same double card U joints and everything that we had prior. But $150 for the drive shaft. Really, when I tell people how much it costs to convert this Jeep into a truck, I mean, I usually tell them it's anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000, depending on how far you want to take it, how nice you want it to be. Especially if you're doing it all yourself. I'm going to keep saying that because it really does play a huge part in the cost of building Jeeps, whether you're doing it yourself or not. It's a rough estimate. Like I said, I didn't track any of this, so anywhere from maybe $2,500 to $3,500 to convert the Jeep. Now you do need tools, so we had all the tools to do this. We had all the welders, all the cut-off wheels, sanding discs, all that stuff adds up if you need to get more of it, especially welding gas. I think we went through 1.5 tanks when we were welding, so that gets pricey. I don't have a full list out of all this stuff, but just for you to get an idea, if you want to do this to your Jeep TJ, expect to spend probably anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500. But it is very doable. Several people have DM'd me saying that they're gonna build their own version and they're using the Project Crew playlist as their reference guide for it. People have sent me pictures of hardtops that they've cut in half, and they're using the same Project Crew playlist. It's hard to speak today, to reference for the hardtop build. So it's really up to you how far you want to go, who you want to do it, if you want to do it yourself, but it's very doable. So the first part of this build was talking about the basic conversion. If you have a Jeep TJ and you want to convert the Jeep into a truck style build like this, hopefully you have an idea as to price and what materials you would need, things like that. But like I keep saying, it's very doable. You can definitely do it yourself. If you know how to cut stuff in half and weld it back together, then you can do this. Everything else is, you can learn it. Bondo, bodywork, things like that. You can learn that off YouTube. It's not that difficult. Part 2 of this build is what it costs to make it look like this. It can get pretty expensive, especially if you want to go the 40s, 1-ton axles, beadlock wheels, lights. Things like that get pretty pricey, and I'm assuming if you're in the off-road industry, you know the cost of a lot of that stuff. I mean, I know these are on the cheaper side for a set of 40s. The Raceline beadlocks, you could always go more expensive than Raceline. A lot of this stuff, I mean, you can look up yourself and figure it out, but I honestly don't have as much into it as you're thinking. The most expensive part of this build is the axles, but I didn't pay for the axles. And I'll tell you what that means. I found a Jeep on Facebook Marketplace. It was a Jeep TJ. It had these axles underneath it. It had an ARB dual air compressor kit. It had a PSE hydro assist steering. This is this is a hack. Facebook Marketplace, this is why I'm addicted to it. So I messaged the guy and I said, hey, I just want to buy the axles. How much for the axles? And he was like, oh, I don't want to sell the axles. I want to sell the entire Jeep. So about a month went by and the Jeep was still sitting on Facebook Marketplace. I was like, let's see. Let's just go look at it, see what he wants for it, the whole Jeep, and all I want is the axles. We ended up making a deal. I think it was for $10,000. I bought the entire Jeep, the axles, all the accessories and parts he had for it. It was a full titled Jeep TJ, engine, motor, trans, all that stuff. And put it on a trailer, brought it home. Again, all I wanted was the axles, but it came with the ARB dual air compressor, the TJ, PSC Hydro Assist kit, all the additional fun accessories I would want to run 40s, things like that. So we got the axles pulled out. I ended up building the axles on East Coast Gear Supply's website just to see the cost. I mean, they came with 513 Yukon gear and axle gears, ox lockers front and rear. I just had to buy the cables for them. But I mean, these things were built. They're ready to roll, ready to crawl, ready to go off-road. If I can remember correctly, I believe the cost for the axles was around $14,000 or $16,000 if you were going to buy them from East Coast Gear Supply, the way they sat. That's, I believe, what I saw on the website when I built them out. Now, could have been a little wrong, but that's what I saw, and that's what I'm sticking with. So $14,000 to $16,000 is what this guy had spent on the axles. And that's all I wanted out of the build, along with a few parts and accessories. So at the time, I had JK Rubicon Dana 44s front and rear with electric lockers and all that stuff in the Jeep TJ, and it had already been converted, so it already looked like a truck. And I had a buddy who wanted the axles, so I sold him my axles, wheels, and tires. I can't remember the price of that, but sold him all that stuff, and he's wheeling with his TJ. It's working out great for him. And then I had the Jeep left over, so I bought a set of TJ axles. And that also, the Jeep came with a full metal cloak lock and load system, bunch of brand new parts too, Corvo seats, all this stuff. And I didn't want the Jeep. So I ended up selling the Jeep for I think $5,000 or $6,000. So I ended up breaking even on 1-ton swapping it with custom built axles, PSC Hydro Assist, ARB dual air compressor, all the fun accessories that came with the Jeep. So I basically axle swap my Jeep free. So one of the most expensive parts of my Jeep, I didn't even pay for. And I mean, a lot of people are probably going to look at this Jeep and think I spent a shit ton of money on the axles, where I just hacked Facebook Marketplace. I just used Facebook Marketplace to pretty much buy a lot of my stuff. There's things that I'll buy new because I want to buy it new, but I'm telling you guys, Facebook Marketplace, if you want to build a Jeep, you're looking for a deal, use it, abuse it. Like I said, I'm addicted to it, but it'll help you out when you want to build something expensive like this. To be 100% honest with you guys, a lot of this stuff is paid for in full by me, no special discounting or anything like that. But my dad and I have been very fortunate to build this small platform. I know it's not really big, but we've been very fortunate to get some discounts on a lot of the parts and pieces that you see on the Jeep. But that doesn't mean we still haven't spent thousands of dollars on suspension components, extra parts and pieces, wheels, tires, bumpers, lights. There's still a lot of money involved in building a Jeep. Like I said, if you build Jeeps and you're in the off-road industry in general, you know how expensive this stuff can get. But there's price ranges that you can get the best of the best, you can get the lowest of low end, and then there's stuff in the middle. If I had to estimate, after the conversion, we've probably spent, I don't know, $6,000 to $8,000. I think that's high. I don't know. Maybe less. Maybe like $5,000 in extra upgrades, parts, and accessories. That's for the big stuff: wheels, tires, suspension, bumpers, lights, things like that. But all that stuff adds up, and you can go as crazy and extreme as you want, or you don't have to go that crazy. You could put a stock suspension back on this Jeep, or building a Jeep TJ. You don't have to do a full custom suspension. It's all as far as you want to go. But hopefully this video helped give you guys an idea as to what you think you're going to spend My main point of the video was to give you guys an idea about the conversion itself, how much it would cost and how much work and time it would take to just do the truck conversion. I think the single most expensive thing I bought for this Jeep TJ is the frame. So if you've been following the channel, then you know the problems we were having with the original frame we built for this Jeep. It was nothing my dad and I did. It was just the Jeep lived in Maryland, the Northeast, or the Mid-East, I guess. It's not really the North or the South, but a lot of snow. The Jeep was on the beach quite a few times. It lived on the East Coast for a little while, and it just didn't do well in the salty environment, the winter environment. So we had a lot of internal frame rust. Went wheeling a couple times, came back. Cracks were in the frame. I had my lower control arm bracket on the passenger side pulling off the frame and ripping out. So I had to do something about it. I thought about replacing the frame with another TJ frame from 2002, but to find one in really good condition, I was going to spend quite a bit of money. So we had TDK, Throttle Down Customs, build us a custom frame for the Jeep. And I think all said and done, I spent around $5,000 or just under $5,000 for the frame from Throttle Down Customs. So that's the single most expensive thing I think I've put into this Jeep, was the frame. And that's not something you have to do. You could absolutely use a stock TJ frame like I did for the first several years. I wheeled this Jeep with a stock TJ frame. I mean, this frame has only been on here for maybe a month and a half, if that. So if you have a Jeep and it's completely rust-free and your frame is pristine and you live in the South or the West Coast where there's no humidity and you don't have to worry about rust, then by all means, you don't need one of these frames unless you want a badass, really strong aftermarket frame to go underneath your Jeep. You can use a stock TJ frame and convert it and wheel it and not worry about rust. I think that's about it for this video. If you guys have any questions, I'm sure I missed a few things. When I'm editing this, I'll be like, crap, I should have talked about that, or I didn't talk about that. So if you have any questions, put it in the comments down below. Shoot me a DM on Instagram. It's Built Different Garage on Instagram. But I mean, this Jeep, this is a dream Jeep for me. This is something I'll never get rid of, and it is a dream Jeep build. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one.